Welcome, everyone. I'm Jan Holland, and today we're going to talk about how to support children through divorce and separation. I'm delighted to introduce Collett Smart. Welcome, Collett.
Hi, Jan.
So lovely to have you here. But before we start, I'm going to just read out a little bit about you. Collett Smart is a Sydney-based psychologist, qualified teacher, speaker, researcher, and internationally published author, with more than 25 years' experience working in private and public schools, as well as in private practice. She appears regularly in the media as an expert in teen and family well-being. She is a panelist on Helping Hands at Channel 9 and hosts a podcast called Raising Teens. She has taught and delivered psychology seminars around the world. Collett is an ambassador for International Justice Mission Australia, and she loves that she gets to be mum to 3 children aged 14, 20, and 22 years old. Collett has a parenting book, They'll Be Okay, 15 Conversations to Help Your Child Through Troubled Times. She's also the editor of Raising Teens, a website that she developed for parents and professionals. So, Collett, I think we're in really good hands.
Thank you, Jan. It's really good to be with everyone.
So, Collett, I know it's a real challenge for parents when they go through divorce and separation, but what are the most common challenges for children when parents have separated?
So I think I would break it down into two broad areas first. So the psychological, emotional kind of area, and then also the social area. So I think when I see children in my practice and in all my years working at schools, initially children's emotions might really be up and down, and it can depend on the child. That can really last for quite a few months or a fair amount of time, and that could present as children uh, showing anger outbursts where previously they weren't, moody children, in a sense that you had seen. The anger might come out at school. They may be more tearful. They may excuse me, they may withdraw more, either at home or at school with their friends. You might also see changes in kind of sleeping patterns, eating patterns. Even little children might begin wetting their beds, or you might see them sort of regress into behaviors that they haven't done for a year or so. And then I also see some children act like everything's completely okay, like as if nothing's changed. And that often comes from the place where children don't want to hurt their parents. They can tell that this is painful for their parents. And so they feel like they don't want to have to look like they're choosing a parent, or they don't want parents to be more stressed or distressed than they are themselves. And then the social areas would be what I call the practical things. So we see children suddenly, possibly if there's shared custody, they need to move between houses, or they may only see one parent every 2 weeks, depending on what the agreement is. And so that comes with school changes, or things like where are your books for homework, or where is your sport hat or your sport uniform. Transport changes, and then this missing one parent who they're away from at the time, but not wanting the other parent to know they're missing the other parent, because they don't want parents to feel like they love the one more than the other.
Yes.
And so I think, even Kids Helpline gives us some great points about what to look out for in these changes. And I think it's so important for us to, as parents, realize, even if we have a lot of even dislike for the other parent, it's so important to involve the ex-partner, particularly in the beginning, about when and where you tell your children about what's changing. Be honest. You don't need to give all the details, the adult details or the intimate details about what's going on for the two of you, but Don't make promises that you can't keep with your children. Be as honest and age appropriate as possible.
Yes.
So deciding beforehand between the two of you how much detail you're going to share, and using respectful language when you talking in front of your children about the other partner. And I'll get to some of that in a little while, particularly if there might be someone in this summit who's thinking, well, my ex-partner really is quite emotionally abusive to me. What do I say to my children? I'll talk about that in a while. But,
Right.
you know, understanding your children are going to have lots of questions. Ask them if they have questions, and not just once, ask them a few times. Say,
Right.
if you think of something you want to ask me, even if you don't think of it today, please come, next week or next month, whenever you feel like you have a question, please ask me. Because just because they don't ask you today won't mean that they don't think of something else they want to ask. But
Yes.
no, they will have questions. They'll have questions about, where am I going to live? Will I have to change schools? Will I still see grandma, cousins? Where will the other parents live? And how will I see them? And how often? And one of the big ones is this my fault?
Yes.
Was I naughty? Was I badly behaved? And particularly when there is some turmoil in the home, sometimes children could already be acting out at school because they understand changes are coming or things have been difficult. And so they may have presented with behavioral difficulties, and then they blame themselves. They say, well, if I was better behaved, if I was good, then maybe I could have helped my parents. Did I do something wrong? So that's a big one for parents to always just be aware of with their children. So there's a lot there, but there's a lot for us as adults to think about when we make adult decisions, because divorce is a very adult decision that children have no control over. And so it brings challenges, whether we choose them or not. They just are challenges that come with the new changes. And it's important just to be aware that those challenges will show up with children differently, depending on their personality and the home situation and the support and so on.
Fantastic, thank you. It's interesting that you say divorce is an adult decision, which it is. But the interesting thing is, when we're overwhelmed with emotions, we tend to act out in a very childlike way ourselves, even though we're adults.
Yes.
So I think it's always important to remember that we are the adults when our children are concerned. So how can we support children when they are struggling with these changes?
So I think I've already mentioned how our children's different personalities and temperaments, children will display their struggles quite differently. You could have 2 children, 4 children in your home, and you may have 4 different types of behavior or 4 different types of ways your children show their struggle. And so some children might openly show their sadness, tearfulness, crying, really showing that they're sad. Some children might display confusion. They might ask lots and lots of questions, or the same question over and over. They're trying to get their head around what this new change is going to mean for them. Some children are quite fearful. They're afraid they may not see another parent again, or they're afraid about what this is going to mean for their family, or what their friends might think, or what other family members might think, what it's going to be like having 2 different homes that they have to move between. Some children, there may even be relief, particularly if it's been quite a volatile, difficult separation, or for a period of years or months where it's been really difficult. There may be relief for children in that now we can get to some kind of moving forward. Even young children know when there's strife and there's anger and there's something difficult going on in the home. As much as we try and hide that from children, they know that they pick up from very tiny children. They can pick up when something isn't right in the home between the adults that they love. And then some children will display anger. They're actually sad, but their sadness, we call anger a secondary emotion, actually. And usually when we see in children and adults lashing out, yelling, throwing things, uh, slamming doors. There's something else that's happened before that or happening underneath. It's almost, we call it the iceberg, the anger iceberg, because we only see the tip of what our children are showing us, but underneath there's so much else. So their anger is the explosion we see, but underneath there's these fears and sadness. So just because a child is not crying doesn't mean they're not struggling or feeling sad about the change. And then for some children, it will present in anxiety. Children who are already struggling with anxiety will see that ramped up a lot more, because as soon as we have change in our lives and you struggle with your anxiety in general, any kind of change you'll see an escalation in the anxiety levels for a period of time. And they'll worry about various different things, sometimes things they've always worried about. It could be new things. It's important for us not to minimize our children's worry and say, stop asking me that, I've told you that, or, I've told you so many times what's going to happen. It's important to patiently keep saying the same thing, because they keep asking, because they keep needing reassurance. And so it's important for the adults to continue helping the children understand that your children are your priority. And everything you do is going to be around making them feel as safe as possible, to reassure them, and so on. So it's really about having patience, listening to their concerns and answering as honestly as you can, but age appropriately as you can.
Yes.
It's also okay if you don't have all the answers straight away. You might say, I'm not quite sure where I'm going to live now. Mommy's looking for a new house or a new place, but give them a bit of assurance about them setting up a room. And they may say, well, I don't want another room. That's okay. Just often ask questions about what they may need, showing respect for their feelings, and tell them their feelings matter. And you understand that they're angry, and you understand that they're afraid or sad. Continue spending quality time with each of your children and checking in on them. One of the biggest things that for any stage in our parenting is routine. So keeping up routines, because routines create stability and safety for children. So our children, even though their routines are going to change slightly, getting into a new form of routine as quickly as you can is really important for the sense of security and stability. And then provide safe ways for them to express those difficult feelings. You might say to them, can we talk about that at night before you go to sleep, or at the dinner table, or find a time when they feel they can talk without you interrupting. Sometimes it can be very painful to hear what our children are saying, and we need to process that away from our children. What they bring up in us, we need to give them a safe place to be able to vent their fears and their concerns and their frustrations with us. And then having some kind of conflict space for our children, day to day, because there's likely have been quite a bit of conflict. We need to try and move into some form of calm as soon as possible for you and your children.
Yes, fantastic. Thank you. And when we're co-parenting, having gone through a separation or divorce, what does a sound co-parenting relationship look like?
So there's the most beautiful model that I've recently discovered. I actually interviewed Davide De Pietro with the Resilience Center, and he works with a lot of separated families, does family therapy, family counseling. And he's developed this model called the parentship model. Really it's beautiful. And what the parentship model is this kind of play on the words relationship. So you and your ex-partner, your ex-spouse had a relationship before. And now you've moved away from this relationship, and you need to almost move into a parentship. So you don't have a relationship together anymore, but you are still going to co-parent your children. And so it's looking at what does our parentship now look like that we don't have the same relationship that we had? And his model is literally a ship with three sails.
Right.
And I told him I'd share this far and wide because I just love this idea. And it's really, his first model is about calibrating towards a shared purpose. So what is your shared purpose as parents? You no longer, your shared purpose is no longer each other and working together towards something in a long-term relationship, but your shared purpose is absolutely certainly your children. So it's acknowledging, though, that your shared purpose is your children, but you will have different roles now. So you are no longer partner roles, you parent roles, and even your roles might look slightly different because you may be single parenting for a while. There may be another partner involved. So that's going to change slightly. But again, your main purpose is your children. And so bringing awareness and appreciating the role of the other parent, still praising the role of the other parent as a parent to your child. I know that that can be really difficult because you will have had a lot of difficulties and differences. And so it's important to find things that you can still appreciate or praise about the parent, the other parent for your children. Why? Because you are choosing not to live with that parent or your ex-partner, but that person is still your child's parent. They are still their mum or dad. And it's unfair and unrealistic to expect your child to choose. It's heart-wrenching for the children. It creates a lot of emotional issues if children feel as though they have to choose. And when we badmouth another parent in front of our child, they feel this tearing as if you making me have to choose. You expecting me to back you up, and that's not the role the child should have. So it's that calibrating to the shared purpose. Then it's managing these. The second sail is managing interactional patterns. So what the model looks like in this sail is really using constructive conflict skills, and that can be something new because obviously your relationship is not going forward as a couple, but you still need to manage conflict in the same way you say would with a coworker you find difficult at work, or somebody else that you interact with that you have to interact with quite regularly. You still have to have some form of civility with somebody. And co-workers at work is the best example because, often we have to interact with people we don't agree with or we don't get on with at work, but we find ways to interact in a civilized, respectful way. So it's finding a way to do that with your ex-partner and display some form of unified parenting in front of your children, and some kind of effective communication skills. And this is where we need to perhaps encourage parents to see people like you, Jan, where they may have coaching just in terms of how do I interact with my ex-partner for the sake of my children in civil ways that we can both agree on, and have boundaries around that, again, so our children don't have to be confronted by the conflict, and they also don't have to feel like they need to choose. And then the final sail is this nurturing the parent-child relationship, and that is you individually as a parent in your new settings or new surroundings, you are highly invested and involved in your child's life. And that's things like showing up to school events, making sure there's no conflict at school events between the two of you. That is embarrassing and traumatizing for your child. So it's about your child when you go to the school event or the sporting event. If you need to stand separately, absolutely, but focus on your child at those events. Be highly involved. And then trying to balance, again, if you having some conflict resolution training or coaching, talk about how do we divide duties and tasks and childcare responsibly and in a caring way that's best for my child. But then, having fun with your child, being able to empathize with your child and look at the dynamics of the family now through the eyes of your child, and try and see what that might look like or feel like for your child. Use communication that promotes um, this this sense for your child that they are fully loved and they are safe with you, and be prepared as an individual to make some sacrifices for your child. And I know so many parents are wonderful at that, and it's really difficult because sometimes you want to lash out at the other parent, and so the sacrifice there is you choosing not to lash out when your child is in earshot. So that's just a snapshot of this parentship model, which I think is amazing, and I've actually begun to recommend to families.
That's fantastic. I love the word parentship, and I think it's just worth going through these 3 sales again. So the first one is the shared purpose. Both of you have a shared purpose, and that is your children. Managing interactional patterns, and display unified parenting. And that's the thing, especially when you're going through divorce and separation and you're really hurting. Sometimes many people aren't even aware of the interactional patterns they have. So I think sometimes it's a really good idea to just step back and observe how you do react to things, and what your behavior is like. And then the third one, nurturing the parent-child relationship, because again, sometimes the children are forgotten or lost in these things because, again, the parents are so busy dealing with their own stuff. And so I love all of that. It's fantastic. Thank you. And then the other thing we just touched on, managing interactional patterns between the parents. And sometimes it's great because parents are happy to work together. But even years down the track, sometimes there's still resentment, or, the parents just don't get on. And it's very difficult, sometimes particularly for one, but obviously for both, if the relationship isn't that wonderful. And so if one parent doesn't want to be involved in counselling or working together for the benefit of the child, what happens then? What's a good strategy?
So I think what's so important, that, and I know that's really painful for the parent who really is wanting to do the best for their child and wanting to try and co-parent and trying to get the other parent involved. But it's so important, again, to remember to be age appropriate and talk about things appropriately in front of your children. So not bad mouthing the other parent in front of the child. No matter your frustrations, I think that is where you will find safe people to vent to yourself, and let it all out with those safe adults. Talk about what is painful for you, brainstorm ideas with your coach if you need to, or your counselor. Talk about what you need and how frustrated you are, but in front of your child, just be really careful, because a child will interpret that as rejection by the other parent. And look, I'm not talking about abusive situations here. That's another topic completely, where there's abuse. And I don't mean that you're not honest about something being dangerous. And also it's important to be honest about boundaries, healthy boundaries with your child. If you see another parent being emotionally abusive with your child, or rejecting the child, you can be honest with your child with that, and let them talk about what they feel about with that. And that's where I really encourage parents to help their child to find a counselor, because again, children will often not tell you everything they feel because they feel like they're betraying the other parent to you. And they also don't want to hurt you or burden you. I've heard so many children say, I don't want to tell mom about that because she's carrying enough. And know that that comes from the best place in your child's heart. And so sometimes the best thing you can do is allow a child, or encourage your child, to see a school counselor or someone outside of school, where they can just talk with a mentor about what they feel is going on with the parents, or the parent who is not wanting to be as involved in working together. So even though it can be tricky, particularly if you sense that another parent is not making healthy decisions around the child. That's where I do say you can be honest about boundaries in age-appropriate ways. But children are clever. Children are bright, and they will come to a place where they understand that one parent is doing one thing and another parent is doing something else. And they will also make up their minds as they grow up about another parent.
Yes.
Because usually when I've seen it time and again, when you badmouth another parent over and over to a child, it tends to backfire on the parent who's doing the bad mouthing.
Yes.
And it could be, some of it could be really true. But the child finds it very difficult to reconcile that in their mind. And so some of the things maybe you need to hold back, or wait until a child is a young adult before you share some of the details of perhaps what went on. Again, just, not sharing everything with the child, keeping in mind your child is always your child, and wait until perhaps as a young adult they might be ready to or want to hear certain details. But that's why I say try and be respectful about the other parent as much as possible, because it can backfire on a parent when they're saying too much about the other parent. Children find it very difficult, as I said, to make a choice between two parents. Also, what I'm thinking is, under this question you've asked me, Jan, is so often I see one parent, not often, but occasionally, I will see one parent trying to act like what I call the parent, as in being the child's peer. So it may come from feeling guilty or bad about the divorce, or, wanting your child still to be happy or still to like you. We need to be really, really careful when we try and act like our child's best friend. Our children do not need 30 or 40-year-old best friends. They need parents. They've got enough friends and other peers their own age. Love, for a child to feel loved, they need two things. They need boundaries, and they need, what I say is, truckloads of love. So a lot of the affection and the emotion is the one part of it, but the other part is the boundary, and boundaries create a sense of safety, and safety helps a child feel loved. And that is what we call, we have different parenting styles. We have authoritative parenting, where this is this type of parenting style. The authoritative parent is the one who is the parent who balances truckloads of love with boundaries. The parent is the more permissive parenting style. And then, of course, the authoritarian parent is the parent who wants to just give all the rules. What can happen sometimes is when one parent tends to be the parent or the permissive parent and wants to be the child's friend, and they always seem to be doing the fun stuff, and there's no bedtimes and there's no screen time rules and kind of no boundaries, the other parent tends to want to overcompensate. And that can also then backfire, because the child feels stifled by the parent who's trying to create boundaries. You don't need to do that. It's important for the child to still have the authoritative, loving, caring, but healthy boundaries around technology and sleep times and homework times in your home. The encouraging thing is, all the research shows that for children to develop resilience, they need only one safe, secure adult in their lives. So if a parent is listening to this and the other parent who is clearly not involved, because you're obviously the parent who's wanting to make changes because you're listening to this and you're interested in how to best parent your child, perhaps the other parent isn't, please be encouraged and know children can adapt quite easily to the household or the situations where they're at. I've seen it in schools. Children will adapt to permissive teachers compared to authoritative teachers. They will adapt in the classrooms. They will adapt at home, and they will feel safe and secure and loved. Are they going to tell you they love your boundaries? Absolutely not. I don't think one of my children has ever said it, probably until my two were young adults. As young children, they never said, "Oh, thank you, Mum, so much for the technology boundaries you set up. It makes me feel so safe." I still have a 15-year-old at home. He's just turned 15, actually. And, I don't expect my children to love all my boundaries, but
Yeah.
they're part of loving, secure parenting. And so then, of course, just to sum up this or to finish off this question you asked me, again, getting counseling for yourself, support for yourself, and support for your child is really important, so that your children can talk about what they need away from you, and you can vent and be honest out of earshot of your child.
Yes, that's fantastic. Thank you. I can see that safety, security, and love are so important because that's what a baby needs. That's,
Yes,
they're the basic things a baby needs.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
then if we can provide that forever, I think that's great parenting. So thank
Oh,
you.
Jan, also, sorry, something practical I'd actually wanted to say is, when we work together with our children, on behalf of our children, is also advocating for your child at school. Even if one parent isn't working with the other one, or even if it's the start of the separation and things have changed. And I mentioned right at the beginning, the sport hat might have been left at the one parent, and or the homework might not have arrived. Teachers and schools don't know that there's changes in your home.
Yes,
It's important not to be embarrassed. It's important for you to advocate for your child and go and talk confidentially either to the grade head, pastoral care teacher, principal, classroom teacher, whoever you feel will be able to support your child the most. They need to know that your child may be forgetting things.
yes,
And I'm a big advocate, particularly when I worked as a school psychologist, saying to teachers, please do not give children detention if they have not brought their homework because their homework was left at another parent.
yes,
Now, of course, children are going to, because they're children, they might use that as an excuse or whatever. You know what? I don't care. At a time that children have got so much change and so much else going on in their lives, it's important for schools to be safe, be secure, but also be kind and
yes,
understanding, and perhaps give a day's grace, or, some schools even have spare hats left at the school that the child can keep there, or something extra that the child might need because they know the child tends to forget things between homes. So
yes,
that's just something practical, thinking you might be the parent who's more concerned about that, so that you may be the one who advocates for the child and leaves a spare hat at school and so on,
yes.
and just let the school know what's going on.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And then when another parent is absent, how can a parent support their children through that if
Yeah, this is
they're basically the sole parent?
yeah, and this is, I speak to and have counseled many single parents, and I would just like to say, if parents are listening and you are a sole parent, or you are, chiefly acting as the sole parent for your child, and you're a single parent, I want you to know that you are enough. You are doing an incredible job. I believe that you are uniquely graced and gifted to be the parent for your child. And I mentioned that the resilience studies before, how uh, children need one safe adult in their lives to develop resilience. And if you are in a home, perhaps it's the father who's absent or the mother who's absent, try to find, if you can, mentors or other role models in your child's life. Uh, Boys particularly need to learn how to be good men, healthy men, from other males. And so if you are a mother listening to this, and the child's father is absent, you may have a grandparent or an uncle, somebody who's a safe, healthy adult that your son can be around. But also, girls need to know what a healthy man looks like in their lives and what a safe male looks like. And so having attachments with a grandfather or also some other family members who you feel are safe, that's quite important. I need to just say here, you may remarry and there may be a step parent involved, and that can often go really well if it's done well. And people like yourself, Jan, or other counselors may help the family become a blended family, a healthy blended family. But we need to really be careful as parents not to force our wish that the other parent, whether it's the mum or the new dad, becomes that role model for our children. It kind of like, well, now I've got a new partner, and now he can be that role model for my son. That may take time. It may take years. And you cannot force your child to have a mentorship role. If you try and force that kind of role, it doesn't work. It needs to happen naturally. So it's okay if your child does not choose that person to be their mentor or their role model. It may be a grandparent or somebody else, and you may have chosen that partner. It's going to take a while for your child to feel comfortable around that person. Some children, it happens very quickly. Some children, it happens while they're young, and then teenage years, it all falls apart for a while, and then it comes back again. I always talk about being age appropriate, but I want to just flag something here, because I am an advocate for teens, and I, everything I do in terms of my podcast and my website is around parenting teens. We need to be careful that just because our teenagers' bodies look like they're adults, they are absolutely not. So be careful not to overshare with your teen. Treat your teen as your confidant or your peer. They are not that, and they are not ready for that. You need to have other adults in your life who are your confidant and your friend. Friendship is a beautiful thing with your children that evolves and develops in their young adult years. And if they've had safe, secure parenting and you're not their parent while they're young, that develops beautifully very often in the adult years. But be careful not to overshare with your teen because they look like they're becoming an adult, but they're actually not yet. So that's just me saying, just be careful if a parent is absent. Still, just be careful and kind, and treat your child, even your teenager, with that need for love and security. And then, making sure that your child has permission to have fun and have joy. Children sometimes feel guilty that there might be a separation happening and they're going off to a party or they're having a laugh. And then they think, am I wrong? Because my parents are separating, I should be sad. Give them permission to have joy and have other things in their lives, other sports and hobbies and activities where they can connect in. And I always talk about helping our children find their tribe. It gives them a sense of purpose. It gives them something to do, gives them a community. Also, community outside of school is important so that your children have a few different groups that they can connect in with, whether it's a school group, a youth group, their soccer group, their choir ensemble. And that is all part of developing resilience. When our children have a number of other skills, they have something that they enjoy, that they can connect in with and feel that they have some form of purpose. They have that one safe adult. And so, again, when I talk about the other parent being absent and us choosing our words, it's not about making excuses. It's for the other parent. It's not about making excuses when another parent is incredibly painful and they forget a birthday, or they don't show up to visitation, or take the child on the day they were supposed to, or you don't hear from a parent for a year. It's not about downplaying that or excusing it. Just be careful what you say, but let your child talk if they feel comfortable telling you. And then again, having that counselor or coach or mentor that you give them permission to talk to. Children can sometimes feel as though their parent will feel betrayed if they're talking to someone else. We need to say to our children, please say to your counselor or your mentor or grandma, whatever you need to say, you don't
Yes.
always have to tell me. I don't mind if you don't feel comfortable telling me. I want you to feel like you've got somebody to talk to. I'm not going to be sad or hurt. I'm happier knowing you've got somebody to talk to. And if you do feel a bit hurt, please tell somebody else. As a parent, it can feel a bit tricky when you feel your children are sharing with someone else. But for some of that painful stuff, they need our permission to be able to talk to somebody else, because your children love you, and they want to also process some of their pain away from you. So yeah, it's about connecting in with our children, but making sure they have support systems and giving them permission to use those support systems.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And just going back to when sometimes a new partner enters the scene, sometimes the parent is frustrated, or even the new partner is frustrated because they feel that the child doesn't like them and so on. And I think in those situations, it's really important to remember you have the relationship with this new partner, and your child didn't choose this new partner, and also to just be patient. The child doesn't have to like them as much as you do, or relate with them like you do, because again, they're children, and they're not in that relationship. But I think sometimes parents get frustrated when they shouldn't.
Yes, and I think it's important also to just be really careful around the boundaries and the discipline of your partner's children. You know, if you're now coming into a home where the partner has children, if you're the person coming into that family, it can be really tricky. And that is, again, where I would say see a coach, a separation coach or divorce coach, a family therapist, a counselor together, even with the children, to work out what works for that child. Because sometimes trying to enforce boundaries when the child doesn't feel that you're their parent yet, they find that really difficult, and it can actually backfire and create more of a rift. So sometimes some of that needs to fall onto the biological parent, but not saying that the step parent needs to just be the friend either. Absolutely not. And they also shouldn't be, emotionally, physically, or verbally abused by the child either. That's not what I'm saying. That's not appropriate. So it might be that as a new family or a new blended family, you may need some guidance about what works with each family member and each person's personality.
Fantastic. Oh, look, Collett, this was just so wonderful. And I think the two things that stood out for me was that for children to have resilience, you just need one safe adult. I think that's wonderful for parents to have.
Yes.
And then I just love the parentship model with the shared purpose, managing interactional patterns and nurturing the parent-child relationship. But obviously there was so much more here, and I so appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Collett, how can people find out more about you?
So I've got a website. My author website is just collettsmart.com, but I've got Raising Teenagers website, it's called raisingteens.au. And I've also got a podcast where every week I have a different guest expert who comes in, and we've spoken about things like the teenage brain, technology, vaping and alcohol, self-harming behaviors. We cover a lot of areas around how to raise our teenagers, how to connect with our teenagers in healthy ways. And then I've got a Facebook page you can also find me on. That's probably where I'm the most active.
Fantastic. Thank you. And we'll put that on the page. So thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.